All right, now that we're getting back into our podcast here on Montgomery County Now, we thought it was so very important to kick off the show with one of the most powerful guests we have in this county, and that's professional boxing champion Bobby Stewart from Tribesville, New York. Bobby, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
You know what, Bobby? I'll tell you, I always try to do a little bit of research. I mean, obviously, I know you and I know a little bit of your history, but I've been absolutely fascinated in getting a little more to the roots of boxing in Montgomery County and Tribesville, New York, and Amsterdam, New York, and talking to you about your history. And I'd love it if you go through it with us and for our listeners on the show and talk about the struggles and the hard work and everything you've done to get to the point where you are today. And in my mind, a local legend. So it's an honor and a privilege to have you here. And, just talking to you before we started the show here, Bobby, we got into the deep roots of how you got involved in boxing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Amsterdam, I grew up in Amsterdam, and I remember my father watching fights on TV, and there was a lot of, well, it was a little before me, but there was 30s and the 40s, there was a lot of fights in Amsterdam, a lot of amateur fighting, and a lot of good fighters too. The Bay of the Perfettis, the South Side guys, we had the Sizdeks up north, the South End would fight the North End, the East End fight the West End, stuff like that. I was just sort of interested, and I say my father watched the fights, and I would watch them with him once in a while on Friday night fights. And then when I joined the YMCA, and I used to watch once they would punch the bags. They weren't allowed to actually box in the YMCA, but they would punch the bags, the guys and stuff. And I always said I'd like to do that someday. When I got older, 14, 15, or 13, 14, I went to the Y and I watched the guys punch the bag. And they would even sneak outside sometimes, or sneak. They weren't allowed to box in the YMCA supposedly, but they did. So that's how I got actually involved in fighting. I started
bootleg boxing outside the Y, right?
Yep.
That's
or,
a fantastic
or inside
story.
a boiler room. He used to sneak in the boiler room, and Bill Jenick, who was the boss, the physical guy, if he was upstairs on the phone or something, they'd box downstairs too in the boiler room.
You know, it fascinates me because if you Google Amsterdam boxing and you start doing research, it says it was very popular in the 30s, and then it was a little bit of a break, and then it got very popular again with you in the 70s. And it blows me away as a guy who was not involved in boxing and certainly not a professional athlete, how someone from Tribesville, New York, got involved in it, made his way into different gyms. I think you talked about you went down to the Gold Gloves down in Troy, right? And you got yourself into fights and then became professional and won a national championship in 1974 as the champ. And you said that fight was in Denver, Colorado. Talk about that transition from Tribesville and Amsterdam to Troy to travel in the country. It seems very difficult and monumental task to someone sitting here, but you explained it like it was just your life at the time.
I played football and basketball and stuff like that, but I wasn't a team man. I always blamed it on you, or I blamed it on him. That's why we lost. It was just as much my fault as anybody else's.
Yeah.
So I said, if I got into something like that, I couldn't blame nobody. So I always admired the guys. Like I say, my father watched the fights on TV, and I said, one time I said, why do they get so tired? He said, it's because they're fighting 3-minute rounds. He said, next round, hold your arms out. Hold my arms out. Like I couldn't hold them, just hold them out for 3 minutes, let alone be punching at somebody.
Yeah.
So they, as I say, I hung around the YMCA, and the boxers would start. So I said, maybe I'd try that someday, but I was scared. I would never admit it, but I was scared to death. Then I got in, I started training a little bit. I was hitting the bag a little bit, and I'd go a little bit more and stuff. And next thing you know, I entered the Golden Gloves in Troy with the rest of the guys that went down. And I got lucky and I won my first fight. That was like a big thing. It was a novice heavyweight fight with no experience or anything, but I beat a local guy. And somebody said, you should go to Albany, because you got a little more potential than you think you have and stuff like that. So that's when I went to Trinity Institute in downtown South End of Albany, where Matt Bransky was the trainer. And I walked in, and he says, "What do you want?" I was scared to death. I says, "I want to work out." He says, "There's the bag." So that's where I started. But then little did he know that I'm going to come back every single day.
So he started to see that grit and determination from you.
Yes, just showing up every day, because I didn't know much what I was doing. I only had the one fight. But then anything he asked me to do, I would do. Like they box with this guy, box with that guy. I boxed with some of the biggest guys, littlest guys, and he liked that I would keep trying. And because I did that, I worked hard at it, and I got a little bit better. And next thing you know, I was boxing with some of the better kids down there.
That's outstanding. That's awesome. Now, you told me some interesting stuff too before we started the show about when you became the champion. It was an off Olympic year. And the championship that you won was the most coveted prize at the time in boxing, right?
In the amateur ranks, in those days, the number one thing to win was the National Golden Gloves, which I won. And the next best was the National AAUs, which was just under there. And then to qualify for the Olympics, you got to win either one of those two or the all-service champion, 3, or they have Eastern. And if you don't win any of them, then they have what they call the Eastern and Western trials to make a 5 thing in each class. And so in '74, and I won the Nationals, I would have been number 1 seed in the Olympic trials, but the Olympic trials weren't until '76. And I was old. I mean, I was 20, I turned 22. So that was old. Most of the guys are 19, 20 and stuff like that. And plus I was married and had to work all the time and stuff like that. So I says, "What do I do?" And somebody says, "Turn pro." You're not going to make any money, a lot of money, unless you get really lucky and stuff like that. So, but I said, well, I want to keep training like this, because believe it or not, the training is like it keeps you in trouble. You're a kid, you goof around doing stuff like that. Yeah. But I couldn't train. I would go to Albany at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever, train, come back, go to work. Usually Tenant Bar, like a Russo's Grill or something, where one of my jobs. Yeah. And then I would go after work. I'd go home and I'd run 2 o'clock in the morning. Like the sheriff stopped me once or twice, the trooper too. He'd look, "What are you doing?" It's 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm running down by the ballpark. I'm working out, I'm getting it out now, so I ain't got to get up earlier in the morning. And so they all knew me. So. And then so it was a round the clock thing and stuff like that. And I just, I should have, if I didn't make one change in the whole thing I did was, I would have waited for the Olympics in '76. Even though I would have been like 24 or something like that. Some of the older guys, or the other countries, Russia, them guys they're the pros of the country.
Yeah,
so
right. They're not.
They're
amateurs,
all older.
Right.
They're 30-some years old and stuff. I would have, if I had to change anything, I would do that. I would wait for the Olympics. And maybe I wouldn't have won, but
at least you had a shot, right?
Leon Spinks, who represented us, I was rated 1 when he was rated like 9th or something like that.
Yeah, and you said Sugar Ray and Leon Spinks, and those are some of the names that were in that era
Michael
with
Spinks,
you. Yeah.
Howard Davis. Yep. All the guys that won the Olympics in '76 won the National Golden Gloves the year I did, except for Leon Spinks, because he was in my weight class.
That's incredible. I'm so glad that you came today, and I know you've told this story to other people, but for our listeners, I just want them to understand what you've done as a local person and what you've been involved with and your career. So when you did go pro, which you did, you ended up going pro, and I know you feel that your record should be 15-1, but officially it's 13-3. There was a couple questions on scoring, right?
Right.
But and 9 of those, correct, were knockouts.
10.
10 of them were knockouts, my bad. So, folks, I just want you to know, I know you can't see us here and we're just talking, but I wouldn't go toe-to-toe with Bobby Stewart today. So, not to mention back in his heyday with the haymakers, right? So,
No haymakers, all straight.
all straight,
All
jabbing.
straight punches.
Yeah,
Closest distance between your nose and my nose is a straight line.
that's a
So,
good point.
Unless you get the guy hurt and then the hook. So,
Is that because with a haymaker you open yourself up for?
that too, yeah.
Okay.
And plus, it takes a lot longer to get there, and they use a lot more energy too.
Yeah, makes sense. See, that's why I don't know anything about boxing. Now, you talked about when you were fighting down at the Y and things like that, and when boxing was big, Lorenzo's, the Lanzi family, would host boxing events, is what I've learned. And it's funny because now we go to Lorenzo's for chicken parm, not for boxing matches. But
Well, what happened was that was before me. That was probably like the 20s and 30s and stuff. But they had on the south side of Amsterdam, on Bridge Street. That's
Yep.
where the big first Lorenzo's was, and they had fights behind there. I'm not positive, but Sugar Ray Robinson, who was one of the best fighters ever, supposedly, they told me he fought there. I'm not sure, but that's what the rumor was years ago.
Yeah.
But whatever, they had fights there all the time, right on Bridge Street, behind it's like right around where the new Lorenzo's is now.
That's amazing. The history, across this county, regardless of what you're talking about, Montgomery County is rich in history across the board, and it's just very interesting to get to talk about some of it, and certainly today with you. Bobby, you talk about your career in boxing, the amateur boxing, going from Tribes Hill in Amsterdam to Troy to Albany to Denver, Colorado, all over the country, and then you talk about how hard you worked, and later on in life, you were an employee at Tryon, and you always talk about people want to know about your relationship with Mike Tyson, the youngest heavyweight champion of the world, and it's appropriate you got a GOAT shirt on today, greatest of all time with Mike Tyson on it, and I give you all the credit in the world because Mike Tyson became world renowned and world famous, but it's really because of the relationship that you fostered with him at Tryon. And I'd like to get into that a little bit and talk about that because I think you should be very proud of it, and I think you are.
I am.
And I know you give credit to other people, but you were really the one that fostered this relationship that started it headed down the right path.
I started to snowball down the hill.
Yeah.
And it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And luckily, I took him to Albany. I took him to the Amsterdam YMCA first. And then I took him to Albany to the gym where I used to train, the Trinity Institute with Matt Baranski. And then I took him, I said, is Cuss still working with kids? He says, yeah. So I went home that night and called Cuss. And I said, could I bring a kid down? I said, you got some potential. He said, you think so? Yeah. So she made a date like a week or two later. And I showed him things that would catch Cuss's eye. Little to keep the hands up to custom model style and do this and do that. And when I brought him down the first time, he was excellent. It was almost like a movie. He did everything I told him to do and more.
And he was 13, right?
13, he was right on the verge of 14. He turned 14 June 30th, and it was right around that time.
And he was built where, didn't Cuss D'Amato ask you, is this kid really 13 years old?
Yeah, well, but not that big, but his style. I mean, how he boxed, he did pretty good for the first time. And he was 5'6", 196.
I think most importantly, when you took him down to see Cuss D'Amato, before that happened, you had a conversation with Tyson in your role at Tryon about his behavior and his education. And you said that you would work with him if those two things were consistent and cleaned up, right?
See, when he first came there, I worked in a place where was group confinement, what was supposedly the bad place on campus, but the kids wanted to come there because we had a lot of things to do. They took them hunting, they took them fishing, they took them, if they behaved themselves and stuff like that. And basketball court out back, it was run real well. And I said, he heard, the kids couldn't box with each other, but they could box with me. So once every week or two, we get together, and they had to be at level 3, which is the highest level, in order to box me. And once they started, they couldn't quit. I said, if you don't get in it if you don't want it, but if you do, you're going to last. I'll have to beat you down if you quit and stuff like that, which wouldn't happen, of course.
Yeah.
But the kids were all, and Tyson heard about this, and he had been in Spofford, a place in New York, on his way up here as a holding center before they sent him upstate where they were not sure where they were going to go. So in Spofford, I guess Muhammad Ali came in there and talked to the kids in there, and so he sort of thought about that. And when he came up, he said, "This guy actually boxed with him." He said, he asked the staff, "How do I get up there?" They said, "Just keep acting like an idiot, like you are." And he says, "You'll be up there." Well, the next day he started trouble in school, and they sent him to us. And they called us and told us, "Be careful. He's stronger than a bull. He's trouble, constant trouble, this and that." First thing he walked in, took him in the back and first, make sure he hasn't got any weapons or anything like that.
Yeah.
And said, I kept talking to the staff in the back. I was in front. I said, "What's happening?" He says, "Nothing. Everything's yes, sir, no, sir. All he wants to do is talk to you. He wants to talk to Mr. Stewart." I said, "Yeah, that's not going to happen for a while." He goofed up on purpose. So later on that night, like everybody, the kids were all locked in, like 11 o'clock at night. So I went to his room, and I banged, and I'd get in trouble if I did it, but I banged the door open. I got right in his face. I said, "What's your problem?" And he couldn't look. He couldn't look in the eye. He looked looking the other way and stuff. And he could not look in the eye. And he said, "I want to be a fighter." So the rest of these idiots, I said, if they wanted to be fighters, they wouldn't be here in the first place. They'd be out on the street, going to do a gym, going to school.
Yeah,
and stuff
working
like
hard,
that.
right?
Working, doing something. And he said, "I'll do anything you want me to do." He says, "Yeah, we'll see, we'll see." And I slammed the door, I walked out and locked it. And I said, I had something told me, I can say it now, and I said it in magazines and stuff like that. Something told me this guy's going to try. And not that he's going to end up like he did,
Yeah.
but he's going to try. So the next day, I could not wait to get back to work, to read the log, to see the trouble he's in or what happened. And I talked to the one staff. The one staff, third shift staff, Joe All, he used to live right here in Fonda. He said, "See me, wait for me tonight don't leave before I come in." He said, "This kid's talking about boxing. He's talking in the dark and stuff like that." He said, "He wants to be with Mr. Stewart, this and that." And I said, "Well, we'll see what happens." And I was thinking, I hope so, but I'm thinking he'll just goof off eventually. But it didn't happen. He just continued. If I told him to do 10 push-ups, he did 50. 20 sit-ups, he did 200. He could not ask for a better kid.
That's absolutely
But
outstanding.
he continued to work, the work ethic. I don't care if he from Brooklyn, he didn't even know how to play baseball hardly. And Richie Angelotti was the staff there, would teach him how to play baseball. And he couldn't even swim in the bat. And that was in, say, May or something like that. By September, he was hitting home runs. Because he worked at whatever he did.
Yeah, he wanted he wanted to be the best.
He wanted to be the best. And I would tell him, I said, someday, if only and if you continue to do what you're doing, I'll bring you to this guy maybe sometime, and we'll see if you could actually go there and stuff like that. If you wanted to work all the time, because he takes in fighters to work. That was a professional organization where it was funded by people in New York, big shots in New York. And little by little, he continued to get bigger, and I had to work harder and harder and harder to stay, because like he was bigger than me at the time. And my boss said, remember, this kid's bigger than you. He said, "You can't have the staff getting beat up by the kid." Don't worry about it. I'll stay ahead of him. And I did stay ahead of him.
Yeah. Well, you were obviously the right guy in the right spot at the right time, because
Exactly.
anybody else who didn't have your experience may not have been able to foster that determination.
I'm going to give myself credit, but this kid's work ethic, I don't care if he took up pool playing. With that work ethic, he would have succeeded.
Yeah.
I think he knew it. He wanted to find. He liked the boxing thing, so and I happened to be there. But he would have done something else, baseball, basketball.
So you worked with him. You worked hard. He worked hard, and then you took him down to Cuss. And then, how did that first meeting go with Cuss? What did he say to you after you had a chance to talk to him?
We went to we always go 3 rounds. We went to 2 rounds, and the nose was all blood. I had to keep him off me. I hit him, shot in the nose. His nose wasn't that bad, but it went all over his face, the blood. And after the 2nd round, the guy working the ring says, "Well, we saw enough, Bob. We don't have to go no more." And he says, "Oh, no, we can't." Mike says this.
Tyson said that, yeah.
He says, "We can't. Mr. Stewart won't let me quit. We've got to go 3 rounds. We got to go 3 rounds." And I looked at Cuss, and his head turned completely red. And I said, I hope he's not sick. But anyways, we went to 3rd round, and he was good as ever the 3rd round. And after the thing was over, Cuss was taking my gloves off. And I'm hoping he's going to say I can bring him back maybe or something. Another time. And I said, "What do you think?" "What do I think?" He says, "Nobody here believes he's 13. They think they got to be a lot older. And nobody believes he's never had a fight." I said, he hesitated. He's no, I believe you. If you tell me, I believe you. He said, he's always 13. I said, "I'll get a copy of his birth certificate." He said, "You don't have to do that. If you tell me he's 13, he's 13. He said, "What do I think of him?" Very first time he saw him, he said, "That will be the heavyweight champion of the world." He said, "Probably the youngest heavyweight champion of the world." And if he continues to work like you say he's working up there with you now and stuff like that, he said, "Where's he go when he gets out of here?" I said, "Well, he's from Brownsville section of Brooklyn." "Well, all right," but he said if he decides to, he's got a place right here to stay. I'm hoping it's going to take like 8-10 times before he says that. And he said the very first time he says, if he's got a place to stay right here if he wants to come down here.
That's how much confidence he had that with that work ethic he could become the champ.
Yep.
That's amazing. I'll tell you, Bobby, with Mike Tyson's upbringing and the struggles that he had in the city in Brooklyn, right? To come into Tryon, to meeting you, to you working with him and getting him on the right path, to introducing him to Cuss, and then him actually going there and working hard and becoming the youngest heavyweight champion in the world and probably the greatest of all time, certainly. I know when I was growing up watching him, it didn't matter what the pay-per-view cost, it didn't matter what channel was on or what time of night the fight was, we were in. Matter of fact, a funny story personally was one of Tyson's pay-per-view fights was on, and it started, and I went and used the restroom really quick. It was over. By the time I come back, it was over. So I missed the whole thing, and that's the type of stuff that just fascinated people.
People used to say, I can't remember the exact names of the guys, but they said that we're not going to use the men's room or anything like that because you never know if it's going to be over the first round.
That's very true, and I want you to know, 1, we appreciate you being our guest. 2, I appreciate the stories of how you got involved in boxing personally and how you grew up to be a champ and traveled around the country. And then 3, tying your young leadership skills into Mike Tyson's, developing him and getting him to Cuss and everything. You should be so super proud, and we're proud to have you as a member of this community and the work that you do. And it's just fascinating. I could sit here and talk to you forever about things like this. And obviously, after Tyson hooked up with Cuss and became the championship, you two have stayed in touch to a certain extent. I know you don't see or talk to him as much as maybe back then, but on an occasion you still have conversations, correct?
Yeah, we just it's usually something to do with last time I talked to him was a couple of months, beginning of the summer. We Netflix, the TV thing.
Yep.
They're doing a special on him, and they called me down and he just happened to be there. He gets a scholarship out to 2 graduating people at Catskill High School each year, and he was there that day. And oh no, I guess they interviewed him before me, and then I came and they interviewed, and they said, you know where Mike is? I said, no, he's down in the the coffee shop down below. So I went down, he was coming up, and when I talked to him there.
Nice.
And
is he?
there's another movie. There's a possibility of a movie coming out. That's been going on for years, so I'll see what happens with that.
Is he appreciative when he talks to you still?
Oh yeah.
Does he talk about the days?
He doesn't talk to me directly to someone, but he tells other people. I've heard many things he says that he wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for me. And stuff like
that's
that.
awesome. Super proud for both of you. I mean,
but
obviously,
I disagree though, because I think with that work ethic, I don't care what sport, what job, whatever he picked up, with that work ethic, he would have made it. And that's the whole thing with kids today. They got, especially these troubled kids. Don't try to cure the bad things so much. Find something they like better, and hold that over their head. And if they want it bad enough, they'll forget them stupid things they're doing and stuff like that.
That's a great message. No matter where you come from, no matter what hurdles you have in your life, if you focus on something that you enjoy doing and you work hard at it and you're committed to it, you will make a success out of yourself and other people around you. And you know, I talk about work ethic all the time, and if you could teach anything as a parent or anybody, a teacher, a parent, a counselor, teach work ethic, because you can outwork other people. You know, you might not be the smartest person in the world, you might not look the prettiest, but if you work hard and you do the right things and you follow the rules, you will be successful. And that's really what it's about here in America today. And that's what it should be about, at least. So, now, one last thing before we stop talking here. Tell me about, he got you good once, right, when you were sparring with him? Tyson?
A lot of times.
A lot of times, but one more than other. You thought you maybe had a broken nose, and tell me about that story.
One time we worked in, it was just a straight left jab. That's the hardest. I've been in with a lot of good guys.
Yeah.
And he hit me with a straight left jab that I didn't let on. I couldn't let on to it. Like my boss would say, can't have the staff getting beat up by the kids and stuff like that. And he said, this kid's too big. He's bigger than you. And stuff like that. I said, don't worry about it. And I would go home and work on my own to
stay up with him. Yeah.
Before I would just fool around, but then I started keeping my hands up more. And he hit me with just a straight jab. That's the hardest I've ever been hit. And like I've been in with some pretty good guys.
Yeah. And he was 13.
He was 13.
Yeah. That's an incredible story.
And I thought it was broke. I went to the hospital the next day and checked. He says, it might be broke, but it's been broke before, so there's nothing we can do about it. Just rest it. Don't go home boxing. So I had to make up some excuse why I couldn't box the next day or something like that.
Well, Bobby, thank you so much for being a guest today on Montgomery County Now, and giving me the pleasure and the time to sit here and talk with you about the history of your life and your progression in the sport of boxing, and how Montgomery County played a role in that. And it's so very important to me to share this information with our listeners, and what you did for yourself, our community, and then Mike Tyson is certainly honorable and commendable, and you should be proud of that. And I'll repeat that every chance that I get. Now, moving forward, if you talk to the champ, tell him that we said hi, and tell him sometime to let us know. Maybe he could call in and we'll do part 2 of this series. We'll talk to him. But most importantly, you're our guy. You're the guy here that got it rolling, and thank you so very much. If you ever need anything from us, just ask. We're not too far down the road, and I respect you and appreciate you, all right?
Thank you very much.
How about that for a guest, folks? Bobby Stewart, boxing champion from Montgomery County. Not very many people that can say that and hold that title, and the experiences that he had are second to none, and I hope you enjoyed listening to him. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.